Hi, Assalamualaikum. So today, Chapter 9, Achieving Operational Excellence and Customer Intimacy, Enterprise Applications. My name is Kairina binti Ma'aruf, metric number I19103591. Subtopic 9.2, How do Supply Chain Management System Coordinate Planning, Productions and Logistics with Suppliers? Supply Chain Management Systems if manage a small firm that makes a few products or sell a few services, chances are will have a small number of suppliers. Could coordinate your suppliers' order and deliveries by using just a telephone and fax machines. But if manage a firm that produce more complex products and services, will have hundreds of suppliers and each of the suppliers will have its own set of suppliers. Suddenly, you will need to coordinate the activities of hundreds or even thousands of other firms to produce your products and services. That's how do supply chain management system coordinate planning, productions, and logistics with suppliers. First point is the supply chain. Supply chain is a network of organizations and business processes for procuring raw materials, transforming these materials into intermediate and finished products, and distributing the finished products to customers. Also, goods start out as a raw materials and as they move through the supply chains are transferred into intermediate products, also referred to as a component or part, and finally into finished products. The finished products are shipped to distribution centers and from there to retailers and customers. Return items flow in the reverse direction from the buyer back to the seller. The supply chain for Nike sneakers as an example. Nike design, markets and sells sneakers, socks, athletic clothing and accessories throughout the world. Its primary suppliers are contract manufacturers with factories in China, Thailand, Indonesia, Brazil and other countries. These companies fashion Nike's finished products. Nike's contract supplier do not manufacture sneakers from scratch. They obtain components for the sneakers, the laces, eyelets, uppers, and soles from the other suppliers and then assemble them into a finished sneakers. These suppliers in turn have their own suppliers. For example, the suppliers of soles have suppliers for synthetic rubber, suppliers for chemical used to melt the rubber for molding, and supplier for the molds into which to pour the rubber. Suppliers of laces have a suppliers for their thread, for dyes, and for the plastic lace tips, and etc. So here's is a Nike supplier chain from the tier 1 to tier 2 and tier 3. Every component have their own supplier and then they distribute to the Nike and then Nike distribute to the retailer and then retailer distribute to the customer. So the supply chain illustrated in the figure 9.2 has been simplified. It only shows two contract manufacturers for sneakers and only the upstream supply chain for sneakers sold. Nike has hundreds of contract manufacturers turning out finished sneakers, socks, and athletic clothing, each with its own set of suppliers. The upstream portions of Nike's supply chains actually comprise thousands of entities. Nike also has numerous distributors and many thousands of retail stores where its shoes are sold. For the downstream portions of its supply chain is also large and complex. So that's why we can see lots of retailers sold the Nike's product. Even not only the Nike shop, but also other shop of athletic stuff like JD Sport and etc. Next point is information system and supply chain management. Perfect information about exactly how many units of product customers wanted, when they wanted them, and when they could be produced, it will be possible to implement the highly efficient just-in-time strategy. In a supply chain, however, uncertainties arise because many events cannot be foreseen, such uncertain product demand, late shipments from suppliers, defective parts or raw materials, or production process breakdowns. To satisfy customer, manufacturers often deal with such uncertainties and unforeseen events by keeping more materials or product in inventory that they think they may actually need. The safety stock actually as a buffer for the lack of flexibility in the supply chain. Although excess inventory is expensive, low fill rates are also costly because business may be lost from the cancelled orders. One recurring problem is supply chain management is the bullwhip effect, in which information about the demand for a product gets distorted as it passes from one entity to the next across the supply chain. For example, Protect and Gamble (P&G) found it has excessively high inventories of its Pampers disposal diapers at various points along its supply chain because of such distorted information. Although customer purchases in stores were fairly stable, orders from distributors spiked when P&G offered aggressive price promotion. Pampers and Pampers components accumulated in warehouse along the supply chains to meet demand that did not actually exist. To eliminate this problem, P&G revised its marketing, sales, and supply chain processes and used more accurate demand forecasting. The bullwhip effect is stemmed by receding uncertainties about demand and supply when all members of the supply chain have accurate and up-to-date information. If all supply chain members share dynamic information about inventory levels, schedules, forecasts, and shipments, they have more precise knowledge about how to adjust their sourcing, manufacturing, and distribution plans. Supply chain management system produce or provide the kind of information that help members of the supply chain make better purchasing and scheduling decisions. That's why it's very important about information in supply chain to make a better plan. Next point is supply chain management software. Supply chain software is classified as either software to help business plan their chain, supply chain planning, or software to help them execute the supply chain steps, supply chain execution. Okay, for example, if a large customer places a larger order than usual or changes the order on short notice, it can have widespread impact throughout the supply chain. Additional raw material or different mix of raw material may need to be ordered from supplier. Manufacturing may have changed job scheduling. A transportation carrier may have to reschedule deliveries. Supply chain planning software makes the necessary adjustment to productions and distribution plans. Information about changes is shared among the relevant supply chain members so they work can be coordinated. One of the most important and complex supply chain planning functions is demand planning, which determines how much product a business needs to make to satisfy all its customer demands. JDA software, SAP, and Oracle all offer supply chain management solutions. Supply chain execution system manage the flow of products through distribution centers and warehouse to ensure that products are delivered to the right locations in the most efficient manner. They track the physical status of goods and management of materials, warehouse and transportation operations, and financial information involving all parties. Next point is global supply chain and the internet. A manager uses a web interface to tap into supply system to determine whether inventory and production capabilities match demand for the firm products. Mini point in this point is global supply chains issues. Okay, the first point is global supply chains issues. Global supply chains typically span greater geographic distances and time differences that domestic supply chains have participants from the number of countries. Performance standards may vary from region to region or from nation to nation. Supply chain management may need to reflect foreign government regulations and cultural differences. And also, the internet helps companies manage many aspects of their global supply chains, including sourcing, transportation, communications, and international finance. Today's apparel industry, for example, relies heavily on outsourcing to contract manufacture in China and other low-wage countries. Apparel companies are starting to use the web to manage their global supply chains and production issues. Go through to the second point, demand driven supply chain from the push to pull manufacturing and efficient customer response. Okay, in this point, the state supply chain management system were driven by a push-based model. In a push-based model, production master schedules are based on the forecast or best guesses of the demand for products, and products are pushed to customers. In a pull-based model, also known as a demand-driven or build-to-order model, actual customer orders or purchases trigger even in the supply chain. Transactions to produce and delivery, only what customers have ordered move up to the supply chain from retailers to distributors to manufacturers and eventually to suppliers. Manufacturers use only actual order demand information to drive their production. Also, the internet and internet technology make it possible to move from the sequential supply chains where information and material flow sequentially from the company to company to concurrent supply chains where information flows in many directions stimultaneously among members of supply chain network. Complex supply network of the manufacturers, logistics suppliers, outsourced manufacturer, retailers, and distributors can adjust immediately to change its schedules or order. Ultimately, the internet will able to digital logistic nervous system for supply chains. Last point is business value of supply chain management system. By implementing the network and integrated supply chain management system, company match supply to demand and reduce inventory levels, improve delivery service and speed product time to market and use asset more effectively. So figure 9.4 is push versus pull based supply chain model. By implementing a network and integrated supply chain management system, company make supply to demand, reduce the inventory levels, improve the delivery service, and speed product time to market, and use asset more effectively. In figure 9.5 is emerging the internet-driven supply chain. Total supply chain costs represent the majority of the operating expenses for many businesses. In some industries, approach 75% of the total operating budget. Reducing supply chain costs has a major impact on a firm profitability. In addition to reducing costs, supply chain management system help increase sales. If a product is not available when a customer wants it, customer often try to purchase it from the someone else. More precise, Control of supply chain enhance the firm's ability to have the right product available for customer purchases at the right time. So, in the conclusion, we can conclude how to supply chain management system coordinate planning, productions, and logistics with suppliers is supply chain management SCM system automate the flow of the information among members of the supply chain so they can use it to make better decisions about when and how much they purchase, produce or ship. More accurate information from supply chain management system reduce uncertainty and the impact of bullwhip effect. Supply chain management software includes software for supply chain planning and for supply chain execution. Internet technology facilitates the management of the global supply chains by providing the connectivity for organizations is a different country to share supply chain information. Improve communications among supply chain members also facilitated the efficient customer response and movement towards the demand driven model. Okay, that's all for me. Thank you. Assalamualaikum.